Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Anju Bharadwaj. Will be speaking. I'm the current chair, actually the outgoing chair for Cardiology Professional Community for ISHLT. And it has been my honor to work with some amazing people under the mentorship of certain amazing individuals like yourself who have helped me through this process. So we'll be presenting our, whatever has happened over the past year. So like on the agenda, we'll be talking about our current members, our incoming members, our incoming community chief, some membership statistics. Of course, I'll use the plug in for our upcoming webinar, which we have been doing, we are planning to do with collaboration with AST. Of course, some highlights for our community at the Toronto ISHLT 2026, and we're excited to looking forward to the meetings. So now, this is our CPC representatives from across the across the globe. Currently, I'm the chair, and then Dr. Larmerson, she's an MD PhD. She is our incoming chair as well, and I was hoping that she'll be able to introduce herself. Dr. Punus from Vanderbilt University, she's our chair from past year. She's past chair. Dr. Brian Houston and Dr. Juan Ortega. And you will see Dr. Ortega who will be moderating our upcoming webinar. Our new incoming professional representatives this year are Dr. Snehal Patel. He is from Northwell Hofstra School of Medicine in New York. And then Dr. De Philippis, she will be our representative to the AHF IDN as well. Dr. Clara Larmerson is going to be our incoming chair for CPC. Before that, I'm just going to be talking about some statistics as we realize that cardiology forms like the largest chunk of the representation of the members across the globe for ISHLT. And of course, we have cardiothoracic surgery, we have anesthesiology, critical care, pharmacy, pulmonary, research immunology, pediatrics, pathology, and our nursing and allied health professionals, like infectious diseases. They actually form this strong community we have created, international global community. These are the membership demographics, 61% on physicians, 23% on non-physicians. That includes all cardiology, across cardiologists and non-cardiologists, whether it's surgeons, whether it's pulmonologists, whether it's infectious diseases and pathologists. Region-wise, of course, North America forms the largest chunk. And of course, I think we need some more representation from Africa, Middle East, but I think there's a robust representation from, Asia, Oceania, Europe as well. From an IDN standpoint, I have represented early career committee at the MCS IDN. So our IDNs, 12% is MCS IDN, 51% is heart failure and transplant IDN. And we all advanced lung and failure is 26%. So we have our representatives both in MCS IDN and AHF IDN. So they help us communicate amongst the, this large people, large group of people. We can communicate whether it's our webinars, whether it's especially for the meetings. So this is our upcoming webinar. We have been very fortunate that AST and ISHLT are collaborating on this upcoming webinar, Saving the Gift, which is we'll be focusing on critical challenges after heart transplant. We'll be focusing on, so this is the calendar event. This is on 20th of Feb at 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. EST. This will be moderated by our current member, Juan Ortega, Dr. Nicolava from Cedars, who will be the AST representative. We will have some really high-yield presentations from Dr. Mary Jane Farr from regarding PGD in the hot seat. She'll be talking about early recognition and high-stakes intervention, and especially as we know, we are very soon we will be, GHLT is having an issue focusing on, PGD. So I think that's a very hot topic at this point. Then decoding rejection, what the pathology really tells us. And this was our effort to actually correlate with pathology as well. And just to have more discussions, we recently have more and more data coming. We recently have more classifications, which we need to be updated about. So Dr. Vasilio from Sofia will be talking about this specific topic. Then we have rejection realities turning suspicion into swift action. So this here, Dr. Palak Shah from Innova, he will be talking about his extensive research and of course some really high-yield topics on rejection when we deal with both acute and chronic, primarily AMR. So far, like this is the number, this number has changed actually. So far we are registering count is not 22, it's 87. Julia just updated me today. So we are looking forward for more interaction and of course, once it's not just about seeing it online, we will always be able to watch it on YouTube on our channel. So as you see, standards and guidelines, I will just touch a topic. We have 169 total participants in standards and guidelines and at various capacities, and about 27 of them are from cardiology. So I think this was, I think we did 10 main papers this year. And of this, cardiology was we're still working on more papers are in the pipeline, but this was what happened over this past year. Now talking to our annual meeting, of course, CPC will be hosting a reception. That is Thursday, 23rd April. It's and of course, 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. EST. This is in Toronto. We will have different IDN meetings. I think from cardiology standpoint, we have 22nd April for heart failure transplant IDN meeting and PVD meetings, while Friday, 24th April, we'll be hosting our MCS IDN meeting. And of course, we'll have these various pre-conference workshops, and we're looking forward to this 2026 Cardiogenic Shock Academy, real-world applications. I think this is a workshop that has been hosted over the last several years now, and I think all of us, we have learned a lot from this Shock Academy, this little workshop that we do. I think we have a lot of high-yield talks and a lot of real-world applications, which we learn from different experienced clinicians across the globe. For 26, 27, I think we have more plans. Like 2027, ISGLT will be hosted at Sydney. So we are all very excited. Of course, we'll be the symposia planning is gonna start very soon. I would encourage all my cardiology professional representatives, old and new, to actually submit symposia proposals. For early careers, I always tell them to apply for roving reporters. Like that's how I started my my involvement with ISGLT, and it has been very rewarding process. I think this was a very good way for me to, because there is so much that happens there. We were assigned topics, and then we focus on those particular presentations. We actually give them our own take, and it gets published, and it's really very encouraging for all of us to be involved in this kind of process. Of course, symposium planning calls. We all have present our symposias to MCS and AHF IDNs. And reach out to your CPC representatives if there's any problem, if there's any question regarding that. We're happy to answer that. Regarding standard guide and guideline documents, we are, of course, we encourage everyone to recognize the gaps and needs where this documentation is needed, and reach out to the standard and guideline committee with that, and get involved with writing task forces. Juliet shared a link recently. Said of course it's I think the timeline is just expired today, but this is a good way to get involved. Of course, for a webinar for next year, we should be thinking about if you have any good content, if there's any topic you want to focus on, then we should be doing. Please reach out to us. We will be able to create a webinar. Reach out to your CAPC representatives. If there's any collaboration with global societies, that is always very welcome, because I think together we can we can broaden our audience. And then this one, it just needs more time. So if you have a good idea, if you have a good society who wants to collaborate with us, please reach out to us now. It takes a long process to get approvals from 2 large societies. So that's what I would recommend everyone. And thank you everyone for your time and engagement with the CPC. And we are really honored to have my set of speakers today actually ask the experts sessions, as I wanted to focus, we at CPC were wondering if we can have people who have made a mark in their respective fields, and actually people who want to mentor the newer talent, or people who are inspired, people who are interested to join us and to guide us. So without much ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Rogers because he's going to be talking about engaging the next generation, building a collaborative cardiology professional community. So Dr. Rogers does not need any introduction. He's the editor of JHLT. He's the CEO of the Texas Heart Institute. And I'm very fortunate that I work very close to where he works. So that's my claim to fame, Dr. Rogers. So I'm just going to stop sharing my slides and invite you to speak on this topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Anju. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to share a couple of thoughts, and I'll be brief because I think what you really want to do is hear from the other panelists and have them address your questions specifically. This was an interesting topic, and I tried to spend a little bit of time thinking about what you wanted me to say, and I never really was entirely sure that I knew. And so, what I've done is just put together a few thoughts about the journey and where many of the people on this call are in their careers, and then how to leverage ISHLT as a vehicle to get what you want professionally. And I'll just start here. I had the chance to give grand rounds at Virginia Commonwealth University in December, and I was sort of reflecting on my career and some of the things that I have had the opportunity to do. And so I put this talk together for medicine grand rounds, which from the bedside to the boardroom, the journey of a medical Forrest Gump. And I think many of us start off believing that we know exactly where we're headed in medicine, and then we're shaped by mentors, we're shaped by research opportunities, we're shaped by new therapeutics that come into the space. But there's all kinds of different opportunities that present themselves to us through our professional journey. And I think just being open to hearing and looking and exploring and thinking about what those opportunities might be is really one of the most enriching parts of a career. And my guess is that Phyllis and Stavros and John will all agree with that. Is really it is possibly the richest thing you could ever do. And I put this slide up just to highlight some of the friends that I have made, many of them through ISHLT. And as I look at this collection of faces, and I could have filled up 50 more slides with people who I've met and have impacted me personally through my career. But many of these people, including the other panelists, are people that I've known for a long time. We have worked together on educational programs. We've worked together on committees to advance ISHLT. I've practiced with some of them. We've had collaborative research, projects and things that we've done over the years. And I would say that this is maybe the most valuable part of ISHLT, and I believe that ISHLT has done incredible work over the last 5 to 10 years to really develop a forum for discussions about how this, like the cardiology professional communities and all the professional communities, really connect. And in establishing these kinds of relationships and nurturing and maintaining them is really important for one's professional career, just because of the rich network of people that you're exposed to that are global. And that's one of the really exciting parts, I think, about being engaged in ISHLT. I sort of put cardiology in the center of this diagram, although you could put any specialty in there. But, I think what I wanted to do is just remind us all of how we are so interconnected. And, I had the incredible opportunity last week to go out and visit Stavros and go to the UCARS meeting. And Stavros has put together a phenomenal meeting based on things that he was passionate about in his research and clinical career, looking at recovery in people, starting off with VADS, but really now expanding out into a variety of different spaces. And Stavros, I think it'll be fun to talk to you about this, but I mean, the collection of experts that you had convened from across the globe for the UCARS meeting last year is another example of how you use this network to really connect, and so we can learn from each other and advance science. I'll just propose to you that nobody knows which clinical problems are most important. Nobody knows that better than experienced and intelligent clinicians. And so I think that we have a responsibility to continue to drive and shape the future of cardiovascular disease. And I really do think that ISHLT, through all of their different programming, provides a unique forum for us to do that work. And I also would just highlight that really all of us have leadership in us. There's no way you can take on a role as a physician without having leadership traits. They need to be nurtured, they need to be exercised. But everyone on this call is a leader. And so I think ISHLT uniquely provides and has been very intentional about providing opportunities for especially the young people to get engaged and begin working on your leadership. And how does one go about that? And, Andrew just talked about some of the different opportunities that are available. I just pulled some of these off of the website this morning. But when we reorganized ISHLT based on Andy Fisher's view of sort of creating IDNs and creating professional communities rather than the old councils that we used to have, was really a way to reach into the membership and provide many more opportunities for people to have a voice in the directionality of the society, but also to expand the number of roles that people had or the number of opportunities they had to engage and have leadership opportunities. So this continues to grow. I mean, I think some of the most interesting things are some of these special interest groups like ISHLT on Espanol, which has really taken off and is a signature program of the society. Before I leave this slide, I also want to just highlight that I think more than any other professional society that I know of, I think ISHLT has doubled down on the early career and trainee group. And so again, for those of you who are early on in your careers and you're looking for ways to engage, I think ISHLT has been particularly intentional about offering opportunities for you. And then there are other ways to do this, and I'll just put in a shameless plug for the journal, of course, but you should be writing. And I think all of us that are on the faculty for this particular webinar have spent a lot of time working on scholarship. And I think this is probably one of the most important ways for you to be recognized in a professional society is to be someone who's writing, who's volunteering and working on the guidelines that we develop, which are really state-of-the-art papers, participating in the webinars. And there are a number of ways to get involved in the annual meeting, including reviewing abstracts. And Lord knows they need a ton of people to do that work. But they have all kinds of other opportunities to engage through the annual meeting. And I encourage all of you to do that. And then just two more slides. One is, I put this slide in just to remind us that we still have this sort of sacred responsibility to talk about the truth in science and the truth in medicine, and especially with some of our climate in the United States right now, this is a challenge. But if you look, 7% of all Google searches have something to do with health. In fact, there's 70,000 Google searches a minute that have to do with health. And I think it's incumbent upon us to ensure that not only our colleagues, but our patients are receiving vital information that's accurate and scientifically sound. So I'll stop with just this last slide and just remind us that professional growth occurs through multiple nodes. Professional societies are one way. Most of this is probably going to be in your institution. But I do think that ISHLT, because of its commitments and because it's the right size, can serve as an incredible platform for you to develop these rich networks of friends, of collaborators, of people who are like-minded, who are interested in a sort of a niche discipline, honestly. But this is really the go-to organization for patient care, research, and education in the domains that ISHLT has acknowledged. Especially for young people, the opportunities have never been greater. And I suspect that John will remember, like early on in ISHLT, it was a little bit hard to gain foothold. And just so that you all know, like some of you will look at some of us who are more senior in ISHLT and think, well, that must have been a pretty straightforward pathway. I will just remind you that I applied to serve on the board 5 times. And and I was down to the last time I was going to apply because it was so embarrassing that I wasn't being selected, and I finally got picked to be on the board. So don't give up after your first try. It's a complicated process. There are a lot of really talented people. Jump in line, don't be discouraged, but continue to engage in ISHLT. And the last thing I would just say is enjoy the journey. I mean, I think that all of us look back on some of this and think our relationships, the meetings, the friendships, the collaboration has been some of the richest parts of our professional careers. So Anju, I'll stop there. And again, thank you for the really kind invitation to join this esteemed webinar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rogers. I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Thank you so much for this high yield talk. And this was exactly what I wanted, to you to touch base on. Okay. And now I think we're heading to our next Ask the Expert sessions. And of course, please, everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to mention your questions in the chat. Let me introduce our esteemed speakers. Dr. Rogers, thank you for this phenomenal talk. I would love to introduce Dr. Phyllis Bilia. She is the Ted Rogers and Family Chair in Heart Function. She's a medical director of the MCS program. She is a director of the Peter Monk Cardiovascular Biobank and senior scientist at the Toronto General Hospital. She is also very active part of the research and immunology part of the ICE-GLT as well. Dr. Bilia, welcome and thank you so much. And I would like to ask her a lot of questions, but more from an MCS standpoint. Then Dr. John Kobashigawa, thank you so much, Dr. Kobashigawa. I could not believe that you agreed to, this was my claim to, I kept talking about this, how you agreed to be a part of this program. So Dr. Kobashigawa is the past president of AST. He's actually the professor, Thomas D. Gordon Professor of Medicine. He's the director of Advanced Heart Disease Division and Heart Transplant Program. And he's associate director of both the Schmitz Institute and Comprehensive Transplant Center at Cedars Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, which is a very high volume and very highly successful medical transplant center. Our next expert would be Dr. Drakos, Dr. Stavros Drakos. We all know him very well. He's a researcher. He is a great physician. He's a scientist. And Dr. Drakos, he is a professor of medicine at presidential endowed chair. He's the co-director of Cardiovascular Renal and Metabolism Center. He's the co-chief of Heart Failure and Transplant and director of circulatory support, and also is the director of the muscle biology program at University of Utah. Recently, Dr. Drakos, congratulations for your recovery symposia. I think that was very well attended, and we look forward to always see the recordings. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I start with my questions, or we have questions from the team? So I'll start with Dr. Drakos. Dr. Drakos, I see your career, you're a clinician, you're a researcher, you've excelled in each aspect of it. And I see you've created a very successful niche and really mentored fellows too. But and I always wonder, of course, I'm not there yet, but there are some mid-level or mid-career, physicians, we struggle with this, that when we start this process, maybe I'm jumping the gun, but what milestones or what signals is that we are ready to assume scientific leadership roles, whether it's a, principal investigator on a trial, of course, you're a part of it, many of my colleagues, they're very good with research. But when do you say that, okay, now I may be ready for the primary investigator role?
Thank you, Anju. And thank you all for participating today. And it's a great opportunity for all of us. We all learn continuously. And from these activities, we have a lot to gain. So your question about when is the right time to begin pursuing more active and leading roles is a good one. I think that there is no answer to describe it in a very and give you an answer that it's going to be so clear. But my suggestion is to do it rather early than late. And I think that we all learn on the way. And I would say, instead of asking the question of when is the right time, ask a related question, which is, what is the topic that is going to keep me up at night? What is the topic or the field or the theme that I'm going to be passionate about? And my again, humble suggestion and advice is to try to align your scientific and research interest, which is what you ask me, with your clinical interests. I really admire, really do, my colleagues who their clinical interests are completely different with their research interests. I think, and there are a lot of people like that. I really admire them. I think it's very difficult. I think it's easier when you align your research interests with your clinical interests, and it stimulates in a feedback loop one the other. Now, this doesn't mean that the other path doesn't also have advantages, but I think that by the time our clinician colleagues are ready and independent as faculty, or even earlier as trainees, compared to other fields, we are already way advanced in our training. A physician, if you look at your classmates, when we are still in training, we have classmates that they are running companies that they did and they went to other fields. And of course, we call our colleagues a junior faculty, and they may have somebody who is running a big firm, as you know, right? My son went into law. And I think that one of the reasons he wanted to go into law, he told me once, I mean, Dad, I'm going to be independent. So I just think early is not that early. And I would focus more on the topic and the theme, align with our clinical interest if possible, and make sure that you find your passion, which is not easy always to find your passion, but you need to explore. You need to explore, and good mentorship and guidance is always crucial. And I'll stop here and we can come back.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rakos. Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to word this. Yes, exactly. Dr. Kobashigawa, if we can ask you this question. I mean, I know, of course, like, when I've seen these people doing research, clinical, administrative responsive, when they're balancing it, they're usually like, very senior in their careers. But if for people who are early career faculty, how do you think they can balance clinical excellence, research, and administrative responsibilities while they're developing a transplant-focused career? Because I think this is somewhere we struggle. We can't do it all. That's what we always feel.
Well, thank you for that, Andrew. I think if you ask any of the speakers here, they will tell you the same thing, is that we had to all balance things at the very beginning. We didn't have, block time. We didn't have, gobs of money for funding. And we had to make do with what time we had. And sometimes that time was on weekends and weeknights. And I must admit, and I think all of you out there can appreciate that as well. But hard work does deliver in terms of the fruits of labor. If you really put effort into what you do, you will be noticed for that. Let me give you some examples as well, because I think, as Draco said, basically you need to have a passion for what you do. And if you have that passion, it will show. And also to have a mentor. I think, many of us may not necessarily have a mentor in your institution, but feel free to reach out to others. I've mentored several others from outside my institution, and I've been very pleased with their progress. But they did show a lot of initiative. They did show energy and also publications to validate their passion, if you will. But all that comes together, and I think it really makes for support. And once you establish yourself as somebody not necessarily the expert in the field, but having a great interest in that area, you'll find yourself being added to committees, being added to steering committees, if you will. And what's also important is, if you don't necessarily have big mentor or whatever, you can actually participate as a PI in your institution for clinical trials. Why is that important? Well, I can tell you just from a leadership standpoint that, I know who is really out there enrolling patients. I know who really puts out the effort, comes to every meeting, engaged, asks questions. And I can tell you those are the ones that I select as being, part of the next clinical trials. And things will start to mushroom in that response as well. If you volunteer, do the work. I've seen so many volunteers that don't do the work that, they're great to volunteer, but they don't follow through. But if you follow through, you will score many points. And I think many of my colleagues, will tell you the same thing, that those people who really come through and really do not good work, great work, you will be noticed far, far more in advance than others. And I think you'll see your career start to take shape and form. But let me tell you something else too. Be patient, okay? Things don't happen overnight. And even when you think about establishing yourself in any one area, it may take some time, some years, if you will, to establish yourself. Don't be frustrated, don't be impatient, because things will come. And I can tell you that people start to notice, who you are, what you stand for, and also your reputation. And again, I don't think any one of us here on this platform really said, I'm going to be president of this or that. We had passion. We had energy to really do what we wanted to do. We believed in what we were doing. We believed in the unmet needs that we pursued. And at the end of the day, I think all of us here would say that we did it because of our patients. We wanted better for our patients. We wanted better survival, better outcomes. And that's what I think drives, successful people in terms of really understanding why they're doing things, what are the endpoints, and where we can go in the future. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Kabashigawa. Yes, thank you. I think this is very productive for like the early careers because like I struggle a lot how to get engaged with. So I think trials definitely, and I always encourage my colleagues to enroll more and more in trials, which are meaningful trials. Thank you so much. Dr. Rogers, I'm going to ask you one question because I think you alluded to as well, and Dr. Kobashi-Gab also mentioned that, like it's about getting involved with committees and working groups. But what leadership skills should early career cardiologists intentionally develop to be effective contributors? Because I think some of us are really lost when like, how can we contribute our best to be like, whether it's a society committee or a working group? If you can throw some light on that.
So I was actually listening to John's comments, and it reminded me of a really wonderful book that I read recently called The Contrarian's Guide to Leadership by Steve Sample. And Steve was the president of several universities, but his last presidential role was at the University of Southern California. And he said something really profound, and I think John just touched on it, and that is many people want to be a principal investigator, but you really should want to do a principal investigator. Like you don't want the title. What you really want to do, like those people are not effective. It's the people who actually want to do the work, that are the most valuable. And so, I think, so how do you sort of go about this and how do you operationalize it, Anju? I think if you can tie together what you've already heard and then what we're surely about to hear from Phyllis, and that is, this concept of having a passion, the concept of integrating your clinical work with your research work, which just makes it easier. And I agree with Stavros, the people that can separate them are really special people. I was not one of those human beings. Committing the time that you just heard from Dr. Kobashi-Gawa. Unfortunately, opportunities oftentimes present themselves and they require additional work that goes well beyond what you're doing at your institution and your institution's paying for. So I think it's really trying to, a lot of people say this is all about balance, right? But work-life balance, it's more like work-life integration. Like how do you make all of those things come together so that you feel like you're professionally fulfilled, but not necessarily at the expense of being personally deprived. And I think that's the thing, that's the path that we have all walked, to get to some level of professional success toward the end of our careers. I also agree that, it's not going to likely to get handed to you. This is something that you have to earn, and you earn it by putting in the work. And but there's so many opportunities out there, and we've touched on only a handful of them. So many opportunities to get involved and have people start to recognize you as someone who is willing to do the work and develop some level of expertise in a domain. And I don't know if that answered your question, Anju, but I think that's how I think about it. Be patient and be persistent.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rogers. Thank you. And I think I feel the pulse, like everyone says the same thing when I'm talking to you. Patience and perseverance looks like that's what everybody is highlighting. Dr. Bilia, I've worked with her on the MCS IDN and I've learned a lot from her at different platforms. We work very closely. I have not one, but two questions for you.
Okay.
And we have shared our interest in MCS. So firstly, it's just for everyone, not just early or mid-career. But what are some of the most critical decisions or the leadership principles that help us build and sustain successful MCS programs? Because in this world of metrics, and I will add my second one as well. Now, what advice will you give to early and mid-career people who are actually interested or actually want to develop MCS programs for different kinds of centers in different settings? Thank you.
So both questions are very complicated. I think well, let's start off with the first one is building a successful program. It's thinking about the patients first, really having a patient-centered focus so that you are aligning your decisions and building the program around what you want to deliver to your patients, and really having a clear vision of what that program is going to deliver. And it really depends on the country that you're at and what you're able to provide and, what's realistic, but still patient-centered. And then having a multidisciplinary culture, because if you cannot do this alone, to offer good care in MCS, you really need a kind of relationship that's like a family with your surgeons, the cardiologists, heart failure cardiologists, the ICU intensivists, the anesthetists, everyone is part of the decision making. And that's what's really helped our program is really it's a culture around everyone has an opinion, everyone has whose voice is heard, and it's data driven. So not only do you have data that's derived from IMAX, Intramax, etc., but also institutional data. So, I'm a basic scientist, but I'm the one that actually did some of the initial work on our ECMO outcomes to understand what our age cutoff should be at our own institution. And that really changed what we were doing moving forward. So it's really data driven, accountability, really having a process in selection, process in every part of everything that you're doing for these patients. And really deciding, are you going to be a high volume center, a low volume center? What does that mean? And what are you able to provide to your patients? So that's kind of part one. It's really multifaceted and you can't do it alone. It's really important to be part of a team. Yes, you have leaders, but really it's a team in order to make it an effective MCS program. Now, your second part of the question was
how to do early and mid-career advised, people who hope to develop these programs.
Yeah, so I was in the second year of my staff position when I was handed this. This was here's Dr. Ross going, here you go. I don't like MCS. You love it. It's yours. And it was a little bit scary at the time. But again, following the principles that had been laid out by my colleagues who were before me, it's when opportunities arise and there are things that happen. It doesn't matter at what level of your career. If you're passionate about something and you say you're going to do it, you're going to do it. So developing process, that's really a big thing around what I am passionate about, especially not just for VADS, but really around ECMO. We have issues around process. So making sure that we do QA rounds on every single death. It's minor things, but everything. So you put your foot forward, you volunteer, but you have to be a doer. If you do not do, you do not get asked again. It's very clear. And then this is something that I think it starts in your own institution, but then it's in other places as well. So such as the ISHLT, where there are opportunities that came up. So for me, the ISHLT, I was a reviewer for abstracts, I'd say since 2010. I was a reviewer and now it's 2025. So I've been reviewing abstracts for 15 years. And I was actually asked about 3 or 4 years ago, would you think about switching your affiliation to research in immunology? There may be an interesting opportunity. I took that suggestion, and the next thing I know, and I'm on the MCS IDN, and then the next year I'm leading it. So there is things to think about when there's an opportunity that knocks and you can take it, you should take it. I don't know if that
Thank
answered
you.
part 2 of your question.
Absolutely. No, this is very helpful. And I know, as I said, I'm fortunate to speak to in person too about these things. So thank you. I'm glad I was able to share this with everyone. Thank you. It looks like we have some questions from the audience, and I think this is pretty much open to all the speakers. How do you balance innovation without data versus refining existing processes based on data? So like Dr. Bilia, you mentioned about institutional data, Intermax. So how do we balance that innovation? And I think Dr. Draco should weigh in too, considering that he has been talking about a lot of recovery. We discussed that. So I would love to see your takes on this one.
Stavros, I'll start first. What do you think? Yeah.
Please.
Oh, okay. So I think where there's a lot of data when it comes to certain forms of MCS, right? We've been putting in VADs for over 25 years, longer. So there is data that's around that, and that's an easier, way to look at things. But then you look at your own institutional data and you actually then benchmark and see where it actually offers you opportunities for QA, and actually thinking about where you're not necessarily meeting global standards or global levels of certain outcomes, and understanding that, right? So having that quality metric is really important. ECMO is a very different bird. I mean, still to this date, we don't actually have any randomized controlled trials that tells us that ECMO saves lives, and yet we're all putting them in left, right, and center to save people's lives. So I think, again, you do what you can at the time, and it's really important to have quality improvement initiatives and look at your own institutional data, and then really teach yourself to look at the literature as much as possible and seeing where the pearls are. So you continuously are assessing your own program and being part of larger networks. I think it's where it really is the future, especially where there is no data. You just continue looking at your own institutional data and seeing how you compare to others, and be part of networks where you can actually start answering those kinds of questions. I'll let Stavros take over.
Yeah, no, I think that the question that Murudula put there is a really good one. And actually, I would like Joe to comment on some of the conversations we had this past weekend, few days at UCARS, about some of the things that they are happening now in the temp MCS field. And I like the clarifying point that Murudula put below. Essentially, if you just keep going for the new things, well, we need to refine also the things that we have, and incremental changes that we need to do to make them better. And I think the answer is we need to do all of the above. Now, when it comes to thinking outside the box and moving to new directions, it's inevitable that this will happen. If we look back at the guidelines 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, then you got my point. In the future, when they look back at the guidelines we have now, they will treat us like we treat some of the things we find in the guidelines from 20 years ago. So that's how things work. We are in a field that it's going to change for many reasons. We have these revolutionary changes right now happening. It's not just the technology, it's from every direction that is coming. Now, the conversation we had these last few days, and I quoted Sir Magdi Yaqub, one of my mentors: when you are early career, you get excited with things. And then you think that everybody should be excited with the things you are excited. And you find a couple of things that they work, and then you are wondering and you get amped up why everybody's not doing that. And right. So, and we were talking about how at the University of Pittsburgh and other institutions, they were using these great approaches now, integrating temporary MCS with GDMT in shock patients and recovering them and avoiding advanced therapies. And it was so much better for the patients. And what we discussed was, and I remember hearing this, that goes back to what John Gobashigawa said about having mentorship and guidance. Sir Magdi Yaqub was trying to explain to me when I was early career that it should take time. It should be a process that it's going to be long. That's how it works. I was talking to a couple of speakers about it. How many times did you give this talk about this new thing? two, three, you need to give it 50 times, 100 times over the years, again and again. You need to validate, you need to study that, you need to come back to refine it. So I think that that's a good question. And we always need to do both of these directions. And that's why in our programs, we have, as you guys know, people and directions for all of the above. I mean, not everybody is going to be assigned to do. I mean, we have people that they will do program development. We have people that they will do innovative approaches and new directions. We have people that they will try to be involved in all of the above. I think that in reality, and I'm proud of our field, has compared to other fields, I think that we have done a great deal on, I would say, satisfying both of these aspects that Dr. Mulagala brought up.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Drakos. Dr. Rogers, do you want to chime in? Because I think Dr. Drakos said he spoke to you about how you had multiple conversations regarding this topic with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just make three really quick comments. The first is I highlighted this when I had my slides up, but smart doctors know the important problems that need to be solved. So, I think this was really highlighted to me when I was being recruited to Duke. And when I was at WashU before I went to Duke, and I was very used to making rounds with a semicircle of learners around me. And I typically would stand there and tell them all of the things that I knew about a specific problem. But I had a chance while I was getting recruited to go around with Mike Felker. And Mike is a clinical trialist, as many of you know. And we walked into a patient's room, talked to the patient, walked out. And instead of Mike standing there with a semicircle of learners around him, said, the thing that we just saw in that room is unanswered. So let's stand here and design a clinical trial that would answer that question. And I thought, God, this is exactly where I want to be for the rest of my career. I mean, it was so exciting to look at medicine through a different lens. The last anecdote I will tell you is I think it's important to understand what you're good at and what you like to do. So I'm sure that you work with colleagues who are remarkably innovative and they love to go to a laboratory and try to develop something that's super interesting and super innovative. I found that I'm not that great at that, but I can run a clinical trial like nobody's tomorrow. That's my contribution to clinical investigation. It's not just the world of mice is a much safer place because I got out of a basic science laboratory. Just here to tell you. So I think you've heard this already. Find your passion. Find the thing that really makes you. Everybody should have an and in medicine, right? We all like to practice medicine, and we will fill in the and.
Thank you. Dr. Kobashi, do you have anything to say to this?
Yeah, just very briefly as well. We're talking about proof of concept. When we think about what are the unmet needs, it really is working in the trenches, working with your patients and then really challenging dogma. There's a lot of things out there that people do. Why? Because Stanford did it or some, other group did this. But there's not a lot of, data behind that as well. So you can actually think about projects that you want to do to challenge that dogma, the myths that are out there. And there are a lot of them, to tell you the truth. And then even working, we've been working a lot in our institution with antibodies. And when we started using complement blockade for the highly sensitized, it was a concept. The concept that we brought up and that we actually implemented in our clinical trials. And many of the newer desensitization therapies, are out there as well. And there's a lot of proof of concept that are out there, especially with the newer drugs like IDAS and imlifidase. We'll hear more about that in terms of basically getting rid of all the antibodies, IgG antibodies, within 4 hours to really delve into these highly sensitized patients. But these are concepts that one can use, and we're putting together a concept trial of the use of imlifidase. And so these are things that can be done, but again, knowing what the questions are, knowing what are the unmet needs, and thinking about, something that might be beneficial in the long run. Not everything works out, but at the same time, sometimes they do. and you can really take off from that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kobashi-Gawa. So now this next question is actually like a total different topic. So I'm just gonna, and that's an interesting question from Dr. Pooja Prasad. Like any specific advice for how to leverage roles in industry-sponsored clinical trials for career advancement, which I think you talked about enrollment, but this is, I think, a very specific question.
I can take it. And actually, Joe and I were talking about that at the recent AHA, right, Joe? How you take advantage in a good way of these multi-center industry-sponsored clinical trials to satisfy actually the academic aspirations of your clinical faculty, that they're not going to get grants and go for a K award or do their own investigator initiative program, but they still want to be part of what we call academic medicine and innovation and all this. So this also applies to trainees. So we started in our institution this path from trainees, and we offer them when during their cardiology fellowship, you either have a project or you become a designated fellow of a clinical trial that one of our faculty is doing here. And then you get involved. And then as a junior faculty or as a mid-career, that's a great way to be involved in a specific field. Enroll well in this multi-center trial. You get into the community of these field that you're participating and you are enrolling, and you go to the investigators meeting. And this is a great way for our clinical faculty to get involved and be part of a community that is really productive and innovative. And I couldn't support more all the initiatives. In our institution, we created a specific unit which makes it easier because a clinician is not going to be able to hire their own coordinator, right? We just have a big pod and we have specific, we have coordinators, and that's a way that you can incentivize the clinical faculty to be involved. And this also creates, make it more attractive for clinical faculty to work in academic medical centers. And it doesn't have to be a super duper university hospital. We have very successful examples of community hospitals that they created this infrastructure and they are very productive in clinical research.
Anju, can I just add one other thought to Dr. Drakos, and that is it's tempting to treat clinical research like a buffet where you walk down with your tray and you pick out and you just keep adding more and more stuff to your plate. I think that's the wrong way to do it. And John said something I think that was so vitally important, and that is pick a trial after you look at your patient population and you are convinced that you can be an important contributor. Double down on one trial and enroll really well in it. What happens from that is that you end up on the paper. You are noticed by all of the other investigators. You're oftentimes asked then to participate as, on a steering committee for the next trial. Propose a sub-study. Ask to write a secondary paper from the data set. If you're a high enrolling site, you will have those opportunities. And so I feel strongly that we probably overcommit to the number of trials that we could participate in when we'd be much better really doubling down on one or two where we were really going to enroll well.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. I feel like you were able to read my mind somehow.
I was.
Thank you. I know we have 2 minutes left, but I have one more question here in the question box. And this is from Dr. Devanini, who's a heart failure cardiologist in Texas. Dr. Rogers, how do you, in the current era of corporate medicine, balance academia and requesting for the resources/time which is needed to justify the cost of the program? I think it's a very relevant
This
question.
is so easy, Joe. You can do it in 30 seconds.
Guys, I mean, I think this is the most, I was just having this conversation with someone we're recruiting today. This is the biggest threat that we have in academic medicine right now. The days when medicine was flush with cash are over. or our institutions, our hospitals, our colleges, our practices all want us to be generating revenue. And this is where and nobody has the answer to this today.
Yes.
And so you're asking exactly the right question, and I don't think most of us have found the right balance. I think what we do is we bring in a group of people. They say, we're really passionate about being academic
I'll do that.
doctors, and we say, well, we're going to
Okay.
pay you less than your colleagues in the community, but we're going to make you work just as hard. Like that value proposition, it does not work. So more like your generation is going to have to solve that, because John and I are coasting out.
I like that, Joe. Yes.
Okay. In the interest of time, I will have to close this, but like I'm really enjoying this conversation and I wish I could, have more time. But really my big thanks to Dr. Rogers, Dr. Kobashigawa, Dr. Drakos, Dr. Bilia. Thank you so much for, and this is going to be very helpful for all our viewers and all the questions you've asked. Thank you so much.